Good afternoon, everyone. Live from Silicon Valley, California, this is Spiritual Fitness. My name is JM, and I welcome you all to a program today to discuss how to demystify death with your host, Vaisheshika Prabhu, a veteran Bhakti yogi, author, and former monk. We have close to 50 members on Zoom and another 50 members on Facebook. I have Shweka helping me out in managing social media today. Good afternoon, Vaish. Welcome to Spiritual Fitness.
Well, thanks a lot, JM. Good to see you and really happy to be back here in my favorite place. This is the best room in my house, this particular Zoom room. Thanks everybody for joining us for this discussion today. And one of my favorite subjects, not that I relish the macabre, but since I was a child, I was interested in the topic of death because it was an unanswered question in my life. And it led me to extremes in my life, really, to try to figure it out, what it is. And looking at a lot of research and so forth. And I'll present a little bit of that today, as much as we can, in summary of some of the findings from various researches that I've done about the topic, both from the empiric point of view and also from the wisdom texts themselves that give a perspective about what it is we're actually going through when we undergo what we call death. The word itself is not a topic that people suggest for, around the dinner table at Thanksgiving or something. They prefer oftentimes to talk about, what movie you saw or what's your favorite food or something like that. Not that people don't get into philosophical topics, but death isn't way up there on the topic list oftentimes. But it can be helpful. Why discuss it in the first place? There is a concept called force deficiency. And when we have a sense that there's a time when I'll be leaving this body, and you'll hear me using that phraseology in this talk, leaving the body, then there's a sense that, wow, I'm not here forever. My teacher once said, a transcendentalist is someone who thinks I can leave at any time or be asked to leave. And somebody who's oblivious thinks I'll just go on forever, or somehow or other I'll patch it together and keep going. So knowing around 1999, there was a phenomenon in the world some of you might remember. It was another potential world disaster that didn't happen, one that didn't happen, called Y2K. Does anybody remember that? Yeah, it's still in your memory? I know I had associates, colleagues even, who were heading for the hills, stocking up on this and that, and had hats that said prepare or perish and so forth. And I do remember that night when nothing happened and so forth. But I was thinking after that, as I saw countdown clocks, they were measuring the days and minutes, seconds even we had left before Y2K would hit and the whole world would go dark and so forth. And I just remember being inspired by those, thinking, if I had one of those to wear on my lapel that told, when I'm actually going to be asked to leave my body, I'd be a little more proactive in my choices and not think that, I got plenty of time. And even if I know it's 50 years hence or to the minute, then I'll be more efficient maybe. So that's one thought. So let's take a minute to do some introspection by looking inside. Try closing your eyes and sitting up a little bit straighter than you were a second ago. And that brings the mind to attention. And then relax a little bit, keeping your mind alert. And bring your attention first to your breath. And just notice how you're not actually breathing, you're being breathed, because to stop breathing is a real struggle. You'd have to try to do it. It kind of goes on automatically, even when you're not thinking about it. But now that you have a moment to think about it, just appreciate that it's going on and that the oxygen is coming in and nourishing all the parts of your body. And bring your attention again and again back to your breath and notice that you're exhaling and inhaling. And relax, but stay alert and focused. And whatever competing thoughts for action come, just leave them in the waiting room. No need to attend to anything right now except for being aware that you're in a body. And for a moment, just be aware of the environment that you are in. You are a unit of awareness, and be aware that you're in a body. Your hands and feet are appendages. You don't say I hand, you say my hand, because it's an appendage, it's not you. Same with your head, your torso, even your subtle body, psychological body. Thought energy is separate from you, the observer. So be the observer and notice all of these energies, and most of all, notice that you're in a body. And as is recommended in the Yoga Sutras, to synchronize the spiritual energies are there in the heart region. We'll do one mantra, one syllable mantra, Om, which I'll say, and then you can repeat behind muted mics and just be aware of the vibration. And bring your awareness back to your breathing. And then rub your hands together to bring some external sensation to your body. Open your eyes and come back into the room. I had a friend many, many years ago who was a bodybuilder. And he took these herbal supplements. Apparently they had some stimulant in them or something, and he had a stroke because of it. I think that substance was banned subsequently. And he recovered. But he told me that, I said, what was it like? What happened when you were in that condition? And he told me that he was aware that he was within the body, but he couldn't move anything. And he said it was this as if he was in a tunnel, but it was all dark, and he was aware he was in it, but he couldn't move. And this awareness that he was in the body, but he couldn't move it, was striking to him, because normally when I say hand move or arm move, my arm and hand comply and they come up like this. It's simultaneous. I think it and it moves. As I've described previously, the way that the wisdom literatures describe our bodies is as if they're biomechanical robots. And there are algorithms coming from our mind that work instantaneously when we want to ambulate or move our arms. And there's a way that many involuntary systems are going on in the robot, like the breathing I mentioned, the heartbeat, blinking of the eyes. You've blinked numerous times since you've come on this call, but you didn't think about it, nor do you think very frequently about your digestion unless something's wrong with it. It just works. Kind of like a dishwasher. You put in the plates and cups, and then you close the door and push the button, and it makes a whirring sound, and it's just going. So in the Bhagavad Gita, one of the wisdom texts that does address this point about the difference between the conscious being, or the Atma, and the body is called a yantra. A yantra in Sanskrit means a machine. But we as sentient beings are different, a different kind of energy. We're not mechanical. In fact, there's an institute that studies the difference between the energy of sentience and matter. They have different properties altogether. So we are that, according to the wisdom literatures, we are that superior energy. Why superior? Because we're the ones that organize matter. When there's life, then matter gets organized. When the life departs, then by natural law, the material elements begin to become disorganized. The entropy, they fall apart naturally. It's not that if you leave dirt in one place, unless there's some entities in there, that it organizes itself. If there's some ants, you might see an anthill because there's some life there. But in and of itself, earth, water, fire, air, ether, mind, intelligence, and ego do not organize themselves. They become disorganized. So we're the organizing particle, the conscious energy within the body. This is the conception. So what's this death thing all about? Shall we enter into it? I'm surprised anybody even showed up today because of the title of the, I was thinking, should I have done that or not? But I see there's 101 of us here today. So maybe it's a good thing. So let's look at a couple of points and then we'll discuss it, because I think it's an interesting topic. Why not? We have the wherewithal to deal with it. Let's talk about it and see what we can do to improve the way we think about it. Okay, so from Benjamin Franklin, who is an insightful thinker and writer, certainty in this world, nothing is certain but death and taxes. That's become cliche these days. And with such a certainty that death is there, why is it that I don't talk about it very much? Okay, so in describing it, there are different terminologies. Obviously, the way we talk about things matters. And here is a very simple distinction. Death, the word a little daunting, versus leaving one's body. What's the difference? Incidentally, this picture that we see here is actually empirically, there's some really strong evidence for this, which I'll bring up later. But I'll just say for now that in the book I'm writing right now, I've been interviewing people all over the world. Some of them doctors who have had experience, and medics who have had experiences from patients and so forth, who have had experiences where even before they died completely and were buried in the ground, the patients or even individuals I talked to flatlined, means their heart stopped. And there were cases where their heart didn't stop, but they were in the operating arena, and they were able to, even when they were supposedly unconscious, be able to remember what or actually witness what the doctors were saying and doing, and they recalled it to them later. More about that. But this picture is not fantastical. It's actually something that's empirically noted by physicians and others who deal with people in life-death situations. So what's the difference between death and leaving one's body? Well, I took one word out of an important section of the Bhagavad Gita that describes the phenomena of what we call death. And the way it's used, I just think this word is so useful in appreciating the preciseness through which the Sanskrit wisdom literatures describe the phenomena of death is utkramantam. So those of you who know Sanskrit know that ut means out, actually is ud, but then through sandhi rules in Sanskrit, it gets transformed into a t. And kram, or krama, means stepping. So isn't this an interesting way to describe what we call death? And that literally in the verse that I extracted this from, it says, Utkramantam stitam vapi bunjanam bhagunan bitam. Vimudanana pashyanti pashyanti jnana chakshusha. And it's describing how if one has jnana chakshusha, which means if your eyes are filled with knowledge, you'll see that what death is a stepping out of the present situation that you're in now. That situation is your body that you're in now. We noticed in our meditation a few minutes ago, did we not, that we're in a body and that we can observe that we're sitting within the body. Well, what is the phenomena of death? Demystified right here, right now on this show. Utkramantam, utkram means when you so-called die, it's not the end. It's not the blowing out of a candle that now you don't exist. You existed due to a combustion, due to a combination of various synapses, and then suddenly that phenomena that defined you as a person is gone forever. It popped like a bubble, and now it doesn't exist. The other perspective is that you actually exist. You are something, you are someone, and you're in a particular situation that is like an apartment. And when you step out of your apartment and go into another one, you just changed apartments. Or here's another more modern example. If your if your smartphone, I don't mean to promote anybody, if your smartphone happens to go out on you when you're talking to somebody, I mean, that happens all the time, doesn't it? I mean, let's say your smartphone breaks while you're speaking. You've got it backed up somewhere, I hope. And all you do is just get another one, and then you get on the phone again. Nobody becomes too disturbed that your phone either ran out of something or it broke, and then you got a new one. So utkramantam means stepping out of the present circumstances into another. However, continuing the metaphor of the smartphone, when you take your smartphone, when you move to another smartphone, you bring the software with you. So there's a description of how we bring our subtle material body with us to the next gross body. And that subtle body is the subconscious mind. That's why when we come out in the next body, we have a lot of predispositions already there. So that this is one of the explanations. And I'm going to read to you directly from some of these ancient literatures. This one's over 5,000 years old, translated from Sanskrit, just to get a sense, so you can hear it directly, of this translated few passages that describe birth and death. Does that sound like an okay idea? Okay, here we go. One who observes the birth of a tree from its seed and the ultimate death of the tree after maturity certainly remains a distinct observer separate from the tree. In the same way, the witness of the birth and death of the material body remains separate from it. In this way, the living entity gets a suitable body with a material mind and senses according to his fruitive activities. That means karma. When the reaction of his or her particular activity comes to an end, that end is called death. And when a particular type of reaction begins, that beginning is called birth. So I described this in a previous class from the Yoga Sutras, that we are creating our next situation according to the samskars, or the impressions within our own mind that we've accumulated. And I think you'll remember that I described it. You can come back in the Zoom just for a second. You described it. I described it as the Yoga Sutras describes it. Let's say you're walking in wet sand and you leave some very distinctive footprints there. And then somebody comes along and they make a plaster model out of that. And then you get what looks like your foot. So Yoga Sutras say that when we, as we move through this world, we're developing a certain mindset, and we have impressions within our mind on a subtle level. When we leave this body, it's the filling in of those impressions that creates our next physical body. And so karma, or the force through which we're pushed into a new situation, occurs on a subtle level, and the level of our mind, our own minds. That's why yoga is, in the Yoga Sutras, it's described as the clearing or the stilling of the mind, and being able to see what's beyond it, and not being forced by the impressions within our mind to do certain activities, what to speak of, take new bodies. Okay, with that in mind, I'm going to read you the rest of the wisdom texts about, and I think you'll really like this next one. Okay, here it goes. When a living entity passes from the present body to the next body, which is created by his own karma, he becomes absorbed in the pleasurable and painful sensations of the new body and completely forgets the experience of the previous body. This total forgetfulness of one's previous material identity, which comes about for one reason or another, is called death. O most charitable Uddhava. See, this is a dialogue that's going on. It's a dialectic. What is called birth is simply a person's total identification with a new body. One accepts the new body just as one completely accepts the experience of a dream or fantasy as reality. Just as a person experiencing a dream or daydream does not remember his previous dreams or daydreams, a person situated in his or her present body, although having existed prior to it, thinks that he or she has only recently come into being. Okay, let's digest that for a second. I'd like to see if you have any, what did you hear in that piqued your interest, that you found provocative, stimulating, or that you like to question? I'd be interested to know.
I like the last line, which you just read, actually, that we forget the previous life, and then we think this is what it is. Because I think that forgetfulness is a reason we sometimes doubt if there was any previous life as well, right? So,
Yeah, well, imagine how neurotic you'd be if you remembered all your previous lives.
yeah, I know.
And actually, as I promised in the beginning, I'm going to give some empiric evidence about a phenomena which is measurable, scientifically measurable, where studies are being done, extensive studies are being done about the people, children especially, who remember their previous circumstances. This is documented. It's undoubtedly very strong empiric evidence. JM, what else? I see some activity going on here. Tell me what's happening.
Yeah, so quite a few reflection questions. One question is, what do we carry forward from previous life? So that is one question which will come later in the presentation.
Yes. Okay. Let's go back to the smartphone. The hardware is toast. It's finished. It's over. But you still have the software. When you transfer it to your new model that you go out and buy, you put it in there, it's got all your stuff, pretty much. No analogy is completely perfect, but basically we have in our physical body, according to the ancient wisdom literatures, we have hardware and software. The hardware is this stuff. Look at, this is a pulley. There's no doubt it's a pulley. And there's a pump going here. It's just a classic pump situation. There's other kinds of describable machinery within this whole body. And then it gets subtler and subtler. And what you have on the mental level is not you. It's a software that you animate by your own presence, by your consciousness. And so you're the user. You're the user. There has to be a user. So what you take with you basically is this subtle body or the software. You change it from one smartphone to the next, and you get set up again. That's why people, as an example, have predispositions towards certain kinds of things. Let's say, let's take an example of maybe a phobia that one has. According to this perspective, it's a way in which we were traumatized perhaps in a previous life. So, we just have that within us. It's there within the software. These are called samskars, or they're impressions, very deep impressions within this subconscious mind. What else, JM?
Can I ask one question here?
Absolutely. Thank you for chiming in.
Yeah, so what you're talking is what we call as the sanchita karma, right? So we carry that sanchita karma from the multiple previous lives. But how would we know if we were born as human beings itself, or were we born as like dogs and cats and flies and trees and so on, right? So when do you get different kinds of, not just a human being life, but other lives as well?
How do you get one?
No, how do we know if we were born as a dog or a cat in the previous life?
Well, do you feel like chasing balls in the park? If you do, well,
so the NBA, all these NBA players and football players, maybe you have.
Yeah, maybe. Well, have you ever had a dream of flying or anything like that? I'm just saying we do have combinations and permutations of millions of impressions within our subconscious mind, and sometimes they surface. That's not answering your question directly, but there is a way that Patanjali in his Yoga Sutras describes the mind in its clear state. A yogi who's practiced meditation is able to see very clearly the connection between one life and the next, and he or she can look back and see the progression of lifetimes, as much as, he says, if you look into a crystal clear pond, and you can see the various pebbles and stones at the bottom. So a yogi whose mind is clear can see all of these previous lifetimes. There's so many of them. Actually, in Buddhist literature describing, I was in Thailand and I saw this book, a Buddhist book, in some poetry, and one of them is describing how if you were to count all the bodies that you'd have previously and different different bodies you'd occupied, I'm keeping my language precise, that the bodies that you left behind would be so numerous. If you stack them one on top of another, it would block out the sun. In other words, we've had, billions and billions of previous bodies. And so to trace them all out would be onerous, to say the least, and not exactly completely helpful. I mean, knowing the process through which we've come to a particular place is more important, according to the wisdom literatures. Like understanding the technology, like where am I going from here, is more valuable. So, and I will show you, as promised, in a minute, about the empiric evidence from these. Actually, all we have is pictures of the professors who are doing it. You want to show that slide really fast? And that way I can help to answer this question, but go forward. We'll come back to this one later. The University of Virginia, after this one too. Anyway, not that it's helpful to see the three of the professors who are doing it, but it kind of gives a context for this. At the University of Virginia, there's an entire department, Division of Perceptual Studies, through which this succession of academics has documented a phenomena that takes place when children at a particular age, which is apparently a liminal stage in their lives, remember their previous body. And so the child will say something like, you're not my only mother. I have another mother, and I have another father, and I used to live in such and such a place, and this is how I died, and many, many other details. And so this is something that these particular scientists measure. In other words, they do in clinical situations studies which they're able to either verify or not the kinds of things that the child is saying by going to these places and looking through the records, finding out what happened. The child will name the particular apartment or house, the number on the house, and things like that. We can come back in.
Even actually, Dr. Brian Weiss, there are a lot of YouTube videos that you can see. He's a hypnotist, and he takes you to previous births if people have certain things. So that's a whole bunch of that. If you just Google Dr. Brian Weiss, you'll see a lot of that. WEISS.
Nice. Thank you very much. Yeah, so I don't rely completely on empiric evidence, but I just like to point out that there is a lot of it there.
There is.
I mean, it's not that, there's not people looking into that aspect of it. I take my cues generally from, the progressive teachings that show us how we're in this body, leaving to the next one. And I often mention these empiric studies as sort of a way to satisfy the intellect, because like, oh yeah, but what about this? What about that? It's like, okay, there are phenomena that's measurable that can help you to solidify this perspective, so you have a little more confidence in it. That's how I'd say that.
Thank you.
Nice points. Thank you so much. JM, what else?
Yeah, so Preeti also agrees with the same point which was brought about. I believe we carry our samskars unknowingly. Samskars are our software or basic operating system. And then CK, I think she or he asked a question, not remembering of past meant death is interesting. Can you please expand on that?
Well, I said that we'd be basically neurotic if we did. I mean, what if you were, you know, in a completely different context. In fact, they find with these children, it causes a lot of stress in the family. When a child remembers previous life, not just the child is a little bewildered, but what to speak of his parents and the family and everybody else. Like, wait a minute, I'm your mother. This is your life now. And like, no, I have another one, you know. If you put those all together, it becomes very difficult. So there's kind of a natural, beneficial way in which we see this lifetime as a airtight compartmental experience that we're having. And I say, well, this is my life. This is the only life. There's a different perspective in the ancient wisdom literatures, and that is this: we are on a continuum. We're passing from one particular circumstance to another. And just as the verse that I read to you earlier says that we forget about the last one, nonetheless, we still have momentum. We still have predispositions towards certain things, and we have certain natures, and these are all carried forward. What to speak of, we start getting into karma. This explains the phenomena of karma, and that is, why do certain things come up in my life, good and bad? They're carryovers from a continuum, the continuum of me passing from one body to the next, and I bring with me the results of my work, good and bad, that come into my life. So that is the perspective of the wisdom literatures. Yes.
We have Linda, who makes a statement: my faith and this passage tells me that my father, who passed from a serious illness, no longer had pain when he left this world. That belief is the one thing that gave me comfort when he left this world. Question: will his carried over software mean that he will still remember me? He still remembers me and our wonderful connection, what we shared, etc.?
Well, I talked to a psychologist about memory once, because this question comes up a lot about memory, and he was describing to me the various categories of memory. Some of memory is emotional memory. We have a sense in our heart. We have, I keep using this word predisposition. We resonate with certain people, things, and there are kind of emotional memories that we keep from our connections with people and our attachments and so forth. The very vivid memories of each particular life may or may not be there, you know, in the next life, because it's a whole different set of circumstances. But the feeling often is described as being there, that we carry around with us.
We have another question from Vanessa. What is the purpose of carrying from life to life a baggage that keeps growing and growing? When and how does this stop?
Wow, what a good question. Okay, let's go to the macro purpose described in these wisdom literatures. And that is, okay, I'll put it in the vernacular. The whole cosmic situation, really, the universe, is cosmic sensitivity training. It's meant to bring us to the most refined, highest version of ourselves. It's all benevolent, according to them. Whatever is happening to us is happening for our good, to bring us to the pinnacle of our consciousness, the highest level of consciousness that we can achieve. And what we take oftentimes as adversity in our life being negative, actually, depending on our context, it can be clarifying. It can be purifying even. I gave this example once, I think, in this class, but it was a stark revelation I had one day when I was gardening in my backyard, and a little bird flew into our house in the back window. And I went in to free him from the house, and he was terrified. He kept going from one room to the next, and I'd open the windows, and he thought I was after him. I could tell. And then we got all the way back to the first room. He noticed the window was open, and from his perch, he looked at me with this, of course, my interpretation, this look of terror that you tried to kill me, but now I see my way out. And he flew out the window. And I had this existential experience where I was thinking like, I'm like that little bird. Somebody's opening windows for me, but I take it as an affront that I'm being challenged. You know, many of these so-called reversals in our lives, where they're really reversals, but then actually they're meant to bring us a lesson. You know, what's the lesson in it? We're meant to learn, to grow, to refine, and come to the highest level of consciousness, which, by the way, is mentioned as to be able to develop these finer sentiments. The finest of all of them is pure love and compassion. And, you know, that's the symptom of somebody who's in the ultimate consciousness, according to the Bhakti Yoga teachings. And so that's the purpose, really. It is purposeful. It's not random. It's not some kind of torture, but it's actually an opportunity for us to live in an environment that gives us immediate feedback. That's what immediate or extended feedback. That's what karma is. What's it for? It's for me to learn and grow, so I come into a higher state of consciousness.
There are a few more. Do you want to cover some of the other slides?
Yes, let's go to a couple slides.
Back this.
Yeah, I heard this from my teacher a long time ago, but he was just giving an analogy of matter and spirit are closely intertwined, like fingernail and finger. I just thought that was a sublime example, because you think of the fingernail, it doesn't feel anything, it's dead, but right next to it, it's so sensitive. So we're in a physical encasement, and we feel deeply. What we're in doesn't actually feel unless we're there. So we're in this kind of interesting situation. We're in a physical body, but we ourselves are a different category of energy. So this was another, just the other day, I was talking to a German author, and he was telling me about a friend of his who was a heart surgeon, who has written several books and lectures everywhere, who's a heart surgeon for many years. And he talks a lot about the science of the near-death experience. So just to bring it up, there's lots of empiric evidence about near-death experiences and people reporting what's happened to them when they leave their body and they see what's going on. I may have reported one. I talked to a paramedic right here in San Francisco, and he told me about how he answered a 911 call. There was somebody in an intersection whose heart had stopped, and he and his partner went over there and said, should we work him up? And because they weren't sure how long his heart had stopped for, and they gave him a shot of epinephrine, he said. The paramedics call it Effie. And so his heart started again. And they put him on the ambulance and brought him to San Francisco General and dropped him off. And the next day, this paramedic told me he got a call from the hospital saying the person wanted to talk to him. And he did the patient, my interviewee, that he said that he was grateful. And he also said, I heard everything you said. And he recounted the conversation that the two paramedics had had. He remembered them saying, should we work him up? Yes, let's go ahead and do it. And he was very happy that they had given him an opportunity. He said he was above the car looking down and watching the situation. And so there's, so when you talk about these anecdotal points, there's lots of them. So this particular doctor that we're showing here has compiled many of these anecdotal, and again, they're anecdotal, but they're there. They're interesting. So as we just talked about previously, and here it is a little more graphically, we carry the luggage of our conceptions. Really, they're called samskars. We have them, we carry them with us. And it is a force of our own consciousness that's creating our next situation. So that's called karma. Therefore, there's a way in this lifetime, if we practice refining our minds, our senses, the process of that's called yoga. Really, it's meant to refine the mind, to purify the thought process and so forth. Then we don't carry that baggage with us from one lifetime to the next. Yes, this is the statement about the force of varied states of consciousness. So when it's random, we can pick up a particular body by the force of material nature. As much as nature is causing you to breathe right now, she will also provide for you the appropriate kind of body according to your state of consciousness. It just fills in what your particular state of consciousness is with a particular physical body and an environment that matches. So here, this was just something I wrote in a blog in 2012 at the Apple Store Genius Bar. My genius told me that my laptop computer, although working flawlessly today, could suddenly stop working tomorrow with no warning. That shocked me. I thought the Apple computer would go on forever. But he said, I've seen plenty of times for no reason, it just stops. And so this is a bit of a reminder, you know, the biomechanical robot that I'm presently inhabiting has no warranty. It has no absolute guarantee that it will keep going today, tomorrow, or the next day. It can stop at any time, but it doesn't mean that you stop. You're, according to the wisdom literatures, always there. And what will happen? Ukramantam. You'll transfer from one to the next, one body to the next, according to the force of your consciousness now. Leonardo da Vinci. Well, I thought that I was learning how to live. I have been learning how to die. Another interesting perspective. It's actually very realistic and I dare say edifying if one takes that, subscribes to that perspective that I'm in a compartmentalized situation, and if I make the most of it, understanding that time is my most valuable asset, then we actually enrich our lives. Let's see, JM, some final reflections on the topic. I'm just curious if you find it interesting, the topic of death and transmigration, meaning moving from one body to the next and so forth.
You can unmute yourself and ask any questions or share reflections if you have. Wai Meng has something to share. Yeah, please go ahead.
Hi, thank you for arranging for this session, because I think death does scare me. It's not so much of a scare, it just I don't want to deal with it. Not so much for me, but of thinking of what my kids or my parents, should I die early, what kind of state of mind they may be in, or who's going to take care of my dogs. And that does puzzle me a little bit. But I think just because we don't deal with it, it doesn't really go away. So I wanted to share is I agreed to for my son to adopt a elderly dog, because at the time the dog is already 13 years old. So that type of dog typically lives about 12 to 16 years. And he really wanted that dog. And I don't want to deal with it because I don't want to deal with the death, because it's any day. So I told him, I said, you do know that she's old. She could be gone any day. And he said, yes, Mama. But think about it. The dog that I have grew up with this friend. They've been together for 6-7 years. And he knows that his friend is getting old. Imagine you said bye to your friends and never ever saw her again. You don't know what happened. Versus you said bye to her, and then after a couple months, you saw her again, and she did get old, and she did get frail, but you stayed by her side and said the final goodbye with her. Which one would you choose if you were in that position? I said, yeah, I guess I hear you. I'd rather see my friend for the final goodbye than never ever heard anything and wonder what happened. And so I told him, I said, okay, if that's what you're thinking, then agree with me that we're not going to sink unlimited dollars to try to prolong her life. I want her to live a meaningful, valuable life. One is hard for her to continue, we let her go. But while we have her, we do the best we can to care for her. And he said, okay, mama, that's fine. And so we contacted the rescue group and adopted the dog. And she actually lived with us for another whole year. And we, even though I said I don't want to spend extra medical care, we did to the best of our ability. And I don't ever regret that. And it's a valuable lesson for my son to learn. It's hard for him to say goodbye, but he did evaluate the situation. And the day he called me, he said, Mama, I made my decision. I know it's a time for Tundra to go. If you can come home, we can go to the vet and say goodbye to her.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that story. And you know, we become attached to living beings. We're other sentient beings.
Yes.
We don't become so attached to non-sentient things. In fact, you know, that's one of the topics we've discussed previously. In an emergency, when people go into a house during a flood or a fire, they find the living beings, the kids, the parakeets, they all come out. The guitar can stay. You know, so we gravitate towards life and the living being. However, it's a tenuous situation. One poet described it as, yeah, and you'd have to see a lotus flower. Many of you have, I'm sure, but on the lotus flower, sometimes there's a drop of water. It doesn't stick to the leaf. It's a very waxy kind of leaf, so it appears it never adheres, and it can slide off at any moment. So in Bengali it says, Kamala Dalajala, Jivana Talamala. It's kind of an interesting alliteration there. And that means from this poem that my life is like that. I'm like a drop on a lotus flower. I could slide off at any minute. So, you know, it makes the moment more special. Every moment that we have in this world becomes not boring, but actually a gift. JM, there's a lot more. Let's see what we have. Thank you very much, YM Meng. I call you that because that's what it says on your screen name. But
my name is Yan Yan, Y-A-N.
Yen Yen.
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much. Make a note, please, JM, so I don't forget. She's one of our best contributors.
Yeah, Charles has a question. What state of consciousness is needed to take a human birth? I've heard that we are all lucky to have been born human.
Yeah, that's a fact. Actually, according to the wisdom literatures, it says, again, indulge me, I'm going to do some Sanskrit. Labvam sadulabam idam bahu sambhavante manusha martata manityam apihadira. So it says, labvam means to get something, to gain something. Labvam sudulabam. Dulabam means difficult, and sudulabam means very difficult. Labvam sudulabam idam bahu sambhavante means you get a human birth. It's a very rare thing, difficult to get. It's kind of like winning the lottery of the species. So when you come into a human body, you know, you like, okay, now's your chance. You have a portal, an opportunity now to express your full consciousness, to develop as much as you like. Spiritually, we're equal to the animals. However, the facility that we get from material nature is based on the body that we get according to our karma. So it's a progression that we go through. And then when we get a human body, it's an opportunity. It's a time when we can turn a temporary situation into something very valuable. That's what the verse says. So just lottery of the species. I could have just said that.
Okay. There is one more. There are quite a few reflections.
Well, what does Wolf have to say? I want to hear what Wolf has to say.
Sure. Would you like to maybe unmute
Is he
yourself?
there somewhere? Or any question, Wolf? Or if
He did post a reflection. The short looped, or Wolf is coming on. Please go ahead. Okay. The short looped quick return is a glitch which conflicts with the design time frame. 120 years here, emotional charge, and 480 years not here, discharge. There is more. I think he was just reflecting to the life here.
I don't know if my mic works.
oh, yeah, it works now, Wolf.
All right, so I don't know how I know it, but the protege, the young children that actively remember the previous life, especially when it's a short time, when the former relatives are still alive, those are the glitches.
Glitches. Yeah. Yeah, there's some liminal state, and perhaps all of us have had some kind of experience, a moment of clarity in a liminal state that is maybe even when you're waking up or from a nap or something like that, and you kind of have this sense that you're in a body, that you're something separate from the body itself.
Can I add something to this?
Yes, please, Miriam. Thank you, Wolf.
Yeah. So actually, I read about the stories and about the professors, and I just saw a lot of YouTube videos. But at the end, I wanted to hear from those professors that what effect this remembering of previous life has on current life of those children. And at the end of the talk, I don't remember who was that, but they were saying that even at some point they were scared, or they were like, kind of, it was uncomfortable, as you are saying, to the kids and also to their parents, that they remember the previous life. At some point, they decided to move on, to kind of accepted that that was their previous life. And in this life, they have a new journey. They just learn, and they came to peace, and seems like they became more spiritual person than like rest of us. So even there was a glitch or something, kind of helped them to have this clear mind in like more like early ages than like later than like us, as we don't remember. But I mean, we don't remember our like previous life, but we get to this clarity when we just grow up. It seems so. This is one point that I just remember that talk that those professors did. And then the second one was that I agree with the glitches. So some people just may like born like spiritual person. I don't know how they come, like they just born and they have this question. Maybe you, teacher, maybe had this thing. I read your like kind of background, kind of like you had this question always in your mind, like, okay, what did that mean? Like you born with these questions. But some people like me, I didn't have that. I didn't have that until like I was 37 or something. And then suddenly some glitches happens in life. You see somebody, like something happen, and then it's like a curtain come out of your eyes and you see things and it's much clearer. But for some people like me, it takes time. I don't know. I'm not saying I'm just anywhere right now, but it just need to be just see what's happening around us, and sometimes those glitches just can open your eyes like suddenly and miraculously.
Yeah, definitely. It's great gifts to have those. I read a verse in the Gita many years ago that when I was in high school, when I was a seeker there, and Krishna in that verse spoke about how due to practicing in a previous life, one then in the next life will spontaneously remember the kind of consciousness that he or she attained in the previous life. So it's never lost. This is one of the points about the development of one's spiritual practice, that you don't lose it. It carries on. So there's this phenomena at any age, it doesn't, young, old, whatever, where we suddenly get attracted to a particular idea that, well, life is meant for more than this. And there's some, this kind of impetus, you're very right. According to the ancient wisdom literatures, they indicate that, yes, you're carrying over from your previous practices. And this can be stimulated in anyone because it's there actually in every living being. In fact, the way the Bhakti Yoga teachings describe it is there's every living entity has the propensity to love. And I'm expressing that, and I'm looking for a place to repose that love that's perfectly reciprocated. And in the spiritual practice of Bhakti Yoga, the idea is that, when we're able to actually align that loving propensity properly, so that we're not investing it here, there, and everywhere, that it's unrequited, then actually we start to feel, ultimate happiness. And that can be awakened within any living being. It's there. It's just, it's the natural state of consciousness is to love. And it's described as the highest sentiment. So whenever it comes, there's another poem written by a great teacher of yoga, especially Bhakti, and he says, anytime that you have that impetus is a good time to act on it. Don't wait. He says, if you get that, it's a rare gift and you should go for it. So, and develop it as much as you can. Walk, don't run, because we don't know how much time we have. Thank you for sharing that. It's very meaningful. Well, JM, it looks like I ran out the clock on the field. Hey, nice photo there, Miriam, also, of the butterfly, symbolic of this kind of change too, coming out from a cocoon and then flying, Yeah, and this is the last point I'd like to make. It was on my mind several times, but I forgot to bring it up. We're already changing bodies in this life. It's not that this is a new phenomena. Death is something when you give up the body. We've already given up many bodies. In fact, the body's never the same. The body I'm in now is not the same as the body I was in when I started this call. It's changed since then. What to speak of 7 years ago when every cell in my body was different? When as a child, I had a child's body. Where is it? It's gone. And now I have, 60 is the youth of old age. I'm 64 now, but it's like I have a completely different body. So the idea isn't something inexplicable. It's something that's within our experience at every moment, that we're constantly changing. The external body is constantly changing, but we don't change. And that's why even as you get older, you think like, hey, it's me. I'm just a kid, I'm young. That's our nature, actually. So let's end with a mantra, because we can walk away with a mantra. It's the song in our heart, according to the Bhakti teachings, that directs where you're going in your consciousness and your life. What song are you keeping in your heart? So there are different songs to keep. And when they come to us as a mantra, it's a spiritual formula that you can sing. And when you sing it and you keep it in your heart and your mind, then it becomes the means through which you can purify and direct your consciousness to a higher level. So can we take a look at a mantra? The one I inherited from my teacher is called the Maha Mantra. It's got 3 words. So Hare is like a vocative. It's like a open request, like, please open the world for me. Krish means the whole of existence. It also means attractive. Na means one who ends material suffering. Bliss, it also means bliss or ananda. Rama means enjoyment from the spiritual experience, and Hare is the energy of the original conscious source. So they're all combined within this mantra that goes like this. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. And the method of mantra meditation is to repeat the mantra. I recommend taking some time to concentrate there's traction and progress when you're able to concentrate. So try to be in an environment where you can focus your mind and listen, and then repeat this mantra and listen to the sound vibrations. So let's say it together 5 times, and just fix your mind on the sound that you're making. So you can follow with me behind muted mics. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. And the other way that this is practiced is through what's called kirtan. So it's done more to like a melody, and the mantra is often sung something like, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. And so in the practice of bhakti yoga, there's a way that you can come together and sing the mantra with instrumentation and so forth, and it becomes very, it sweeps you away. It's very powerful, and you get the group energy of everyone singing. And one day, when this pandemic's over, we'll all get together and have a huge kirtan downtown San Francisco, or wherever you may be. We'll come to your town. Thank you very much, JM, for putting on this program for us all, and Shweka for doing all the technical work behind the scenes. Thank you, everybody, for coming today and participating in the topic. It's really wonderful to have you here, and everyone who contributed in text and so forth and speaking. It was really helpful.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chandrika.
Thank you.
So we'll end by saying, there's a phrase yogis say to each other that say, keep the vibration going. It goes, Hari, H-A-R-I, Bol, B-O-L, Hari Bol. So you want to unmute, we can just say Hari Bol.
Hari Bol.
Hari Bol.
Hari Bol, Charles, Hari Bol.
Haribo.
Haribo.
Jason, Hari Bol.
Haribo.
Pawan, Hari Bol. Thank you very much, everybody. See you
Thank
next
you.
week.